Good morning. On behalf of all of the PGA members and apprentices in the Southern California section, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of our fine and generous sponsors. Sincere thanks to Pure Grip, to RFK Training, to Orange Whip, and of course Pepsi, and a very special thanks to Titleist, who has been with us for so many years and has done so many wonderful things for all of us. And additionally, would like to thank Tom Sargent, his fine staff, and the great people here at Mesa Verde Country Club. And with that, the czar of the teaching committee, Bill Holbert, please come forward, and thank you all for being here this morning.
The czar. Thank you. That's president of the section, Mr. Jeff Johnson, by the way, if you didn't know that. I think everyone hopefully does. So we are very excited this morning to put on today's program. I think you're totally going to enjoy it. I'm going to do a couple things, thank some people, go over today's schedule, and then introduce Fletcher Pavin from Titleist. But a lot of work goes into these, and as Jeff said, thank you to our host, Tom Sargent, and his staff, but thank you to Tom Addis and his staff, and the people that are involved in putting this on. David Murdahl, Alex Teagles, Sharon Kerfman, who most of you know, she's been with the section a long time, the mother hen of the office, and our new addition, Brianne Lockhart, right here in a blue shirt. She's our new communications media person, and welcome, Brianne. So let's give our staff just a round of applause for everything they do for us, which is very, very significant. So we're in here this morning until 11:45. At that time, we'll break for lunch, which will be set up just in the other room outside of this room. And we've got tables in the back to eat and tables inside to eat. From there, we're going to head out to the driving range, the far left-hand side of the driving range. Titleist will be set up out there with equipment. Some of our other sponsors, including Orange Whip, will be out there set up. And so we'll have some extra time in between the morning session and the afternoon session to just kind of head that way and congregate and talk to people and ask questions and look at product, etc. So we would definitely encourage you to, once you finish your lunch, to head on out that way. We will reconvene for the afternoon session at 1:15. There will be some chairs set out for you at that end of the driving range. So everybody in the seats, please, by 1:15, and then we'll go 1:30 to 4:30 in our outdoor session. We hopefully, too, are going to have time this morning for Mark Wishner, who's in the back of the room with some sunscreen samples, etc., who works for a company called Sun Safety, to speak to us a little bit about the importance of us taking care of ourselves as instructors, but also educating our students as far as the dangers of skin cancers and what to look for, etc., etc. I think we all have either experienced or know someone who's experienced some issues with that. So just one final reminder, make sure your cell phones are either off or in silent mode, so we don't have any $200 fines levied against you. Just a joke, but anyway. Once again, Titleist. This is our Spring Teaching Summit presented by Titleist. Titleist, a lot of you know this gentleman who I'm going to introduce from many, many years ago. He's been with Titleist for 29 years. He is now their Southwest region sales manager, and you won't find someone who has supported PGA professionals, who has supported the business, who's been with one company and loyal to that company and loyal to his clients for as long as Mr. Fletcher Pavin. I've known him for, I think, almost 29 years because I started back up in the northern chapter, which is where he is and has been for all that time. A totally class guy, and when this opportunity came up for Titleist to be involved in our Spring Teaching Summit, he just jumped at it and is, I think, more excited than we are, if that's possible, to have today for you, our section members, and to have Todd Anderson here to present. So I'm going to let Fletcher do the pleasure of introducing Mr. Anderson, and with that I give you Mr. Fletcher Pavin.
Well, I'll try and hold the microphone while I do this. Yeah, 29 years, it's been a long time. just to give you a little idea of what I do, I'm what we call a sales leader for the southwestern U.S. So having started in Southern California, born and raised here, I get a little extra pleasure being able to do something in the section. I oversee basically the southwestern U.S., which is New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California. I kind of go a little bit into like Nevada, Utah, as well as Hawaii. I travel quite a bit. I get to see an awful lot of people in my travels. And the opportunity to do something like this, to interact with so many golf professionals, is usually one of the highlights of my year. So thank you very much for coming today. I'd like to thank the section staff. They've been great to work with. Trying to put one of these things together is not the easiest thing in the world, but I think we've got a great program for you today. I want to say thanks to Mesa Verde for having us out today. It's great to see Sarge. Thank you, Bill, for the work you did. A lot of emails, communications, telephone calls. And what I'd also like to do is introduce my guys that are here today. I've got almost everybody from my Southern California team here today. I've got in the back room Scott Burke from San Diego. Raise your hand, Scotty. I've got from Orange County in LA, my club rep, Pete Veras, ball rep, Dan Gilkison. From the desert, Kevin Barkley. And from up in the northern chapter, Bill Latch. And not here today is Troy Denslow. He was working a tournament at one of his clubs. He's going to be here this afternoon. And then also back there, PGA Golf Professional, who was hired by Todd Anderson and is now our Director of Titleist Club Fitting, Brett Porath. Brett's with us today. So we got a big contingent of guys here. If there's anything we can do, I mean, in terms of answering any questions for you about the business, we're here to support the event today. And then I'd just like to take a couple of minutes and talk about Titleist's commitment to the PGA Golf Professional and what we're doing from an educational perspective. I don't get the opportunity to talk to too many people, or this many people at one time, to kind of explain what we do from an internal perspective, from a planning. And I'm going to go back about 3 or 4 years ago. We had a big summit with the PGA of America, and we commit a lot of money every year. It's typically somewhere between $17 and $18 million a year to PGA programs. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure the way we were spending our money pretty much overlaid with what the PGA of America thought. And if there were some areas where we were way off, we needed to address it. If there were some areas where we were in agreement, we wanted to make sure we were doing that. So we kind of changed the way we spent our money 3 years ago. One of the first things that we did was we returned to the PGA show in Florida. That was very, very high on their list. But some of the other things that we do that we spend a lot of our money on would be the staff programs that many of you participate in, the personal use products. But we also, and I urge you guys to take advantage of these when they come around, is we do custom fitting seminars for every section in the country. We also run education days like this. We're going to touch close to 20 sections this year with what we're calling the Titleist Speaker Series. We started doing this at the request of the PGA, I want to say 2 years ago, and it's been a big part of what we've been doing at the PGA show. So if you get the opportunity and you go to the PGA show, we run, I believe it's 12 or 13 one-hour seminars at the PGA show. They're fantastic. They cover a really wide variety of subjects. Most of them are hosted by staff PGA golf professionals. And it's all kind of part of our way of, empowering through education the growth of the PGA golf professional. In this, we kind of have like 3 main avenues that we do. And Todd, I saw Todd's PowerPoint. He's going to talk to this in much greater detail, but it's all about growing the game. We see, there's a couple ways to do it. Number one is physical fitness. You're going to see Mr. Corey today. He's going to talk about that, the importance of physical fitness and making sure that people are doing the right exercises so they can play golf more, they can play more often, they can play without pain. We believe custom fitting, that if you can do a good job custom fitting your customer, that they're going to get more out of their game. They're going to enjoy it more because their equipment fits them. And then obviously instruction. We feel like those three things married together makes the golfer happier because they're playing better golf, and if they're playing better golf, they're more likely to play more often and play longer. Okay, so that's kind of my little speech. Now I'm going to introduce Todd. Todd's been a long-time Titleist staff guy. I think it's 15 years. He's been a Titleist staff guy. A little background on him. He's the Director of Instruction at the Sea Island Golf Learning Center. It's a fantastic facility. I don't know, how many PGA golf professionals live out there? There's tour players? 8 tour players. It's a great place. Someday I'll get back there. If somebody invites me, I'll go. But 2010 National PGA Teacher of the Year. His students have won 24 times between the PGA Tour and the Nationwide Tour. He's had 12 college All-Americans. He's a contributing editor to Golf Digest. He's currently ranked 11th in Golf Digest top 50 instructors. And like I said, once again, a proud member of the Titleist staff for the last 15 years. I hope you enjoyed Todd's presentation today. I'm going to listen, learn, and hopefully it'll help me lower my handicap a little bit. So gentlemen, Mr. Todd Anderson.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
History. I get asked a lot by young professionals that come and either watch me teach or I months I was there, I did more than the whole staff did in a year. So I said, you know, it's not that they don't like lessons, it's that that wasn't the thing that was really being promoted. And so I did that for a while, and I hired Brett, basically because I was teaching all the time, I needed somebody to run the day-to-day operation, so I hired Brett for it. He did a great job for me there, and he kind of did the day-to-day stuff, and I did all the teaching, kind of the overall stuff. But after a while, I started getting some tour players coming in. I had some good players that were coming in from outside the club. I had to kind of make a decision. Okay, do I want to continue to do the club pro stuff, or do I want to teach? And, my passion was always teaching, so I decided to start a golf academy down at the Breakers in Palm Beach. And so I did that, where I could get out on tour and work with tour players and develop a lot of new tour players with getting their tour cards. And so I decided that was my passion. I just wanted to see how good I could be as a teacher. And had an academy that did really well at the Breakers. I was there for 7 years, and I got a phone call from Sea Island, and they said, you know, we're looking for a new director of instruction. Your name keeps coming up. Would you be interested? And my wife and I, we had 3 boys. They were at the time about 16, 14, and 12. And it's like, we're going to do it. It's going to have to be now. We're in your time frame. We're not in any big hurry. So I talked to my oldest son. I said, all right, you know, here's the opportunity we have. Here's where it is. So we took a trip up there, looked at it, and ultimately decided to make the move to Sea Island. And the thing at Sea Island was they said, it's your deal. You tell us what we need to do. We just want to be the best. And so I'll kind of go through a little bit about that. So I've been teaching full time now for about 15 years. And I've been going on a tour since the early 90s and trying to develop junior golfers into great college players and college players into tour players. And any average player I get to try to make them play better. So that's my passion. I love to teach. I love to teach players of all levels. I like to teach women golfers, juniors, seniors, tour players. I like variety. If I just taught only tour players, I think it would get a little stale. And if I just taught kids all the time, I like to mix it up. So I have a pretty good variety of players and all different levels. I don't really teach many high handicap players anymore. Most of my players are single digit. But I really enjoy the teaching side of it. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to go through a little PowerPoint this morning. And then this afternoon, we're just going to go out and spend some time on the tee. And we've got Roy here who's going to do some fitness stuff. And we're just going to kind of go through some short game things. And I really want to try to show you some stuff. Maybe a little bit about technique. I found that over the years that everybody kind of has their own beliefs on certain fundamentals. There's certain things that we all can kind of agree with. And there's certain things that may be a little bit different, some preferences that everybody has. So I'll talk a little bit about my preferences, but more so I want to show you the path I think that you can use to help your players play better. That's kind of your So we're going to start off.
Test 1, 2. Down just a little. There we go. Perfect. Now we got everything working. Clicker's working. Perfect. All right. Just kind of like my luggage last night. I'm always amazed. I left Jacksonville. My flight was supposed to leave at 12. There was bad weather, so they moved me to a 2 o'clock flight. My golf clubs went on, and my luggage, my suitcase went right behind it. They even put priority on it because I'm a Sky Miles medallion, so it always scares me when they put something special. Just put it with the regular luggage. I don't want special treatment. So one made it, the other one didn't make it. Both went on the belt exactly behind each other, so I don't know what happened, but little by little we're getting there. It's just taking a little bit longer, I guess. But I want to talk a little bit about golf history, and so just to kind of get a range of ages in here. How many of you were born in the 40s? 40s? Anybody in the 30s? 20? No 20s? All right, so we got a couple from the 30s, some 40s, 50s, okay, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. All right, so we're pretty covered, 190s. So we're pretty covered from, I guess, from the 30s up through the 90s. So we got 60 years. So between us, we should be able to get through most of this, okay? So we're going to kind of go through this. So back in the 70s, we're going to start in the 70s. The golf balls that were pretty prevalent back in the day were Titleist, Pro Staff, Top Flight, Dunlop, Blue Max, they made different Max. McGregor, Turney, Hogan, Apex. Anybody think of any other balls that was kind of back in the 70s? That we're gonna have some California brands. We'll have to. This is the East Coast version. There may be a West Coast version. Okay, so those were the balls that were pretty prevalent back in the 70s. In the clubs, we were Hogan, McGregor, Wilson Staff, Pro Group, Ram. Anything else in the 70s? Lynx, I know was, I don't know when they were around, 80s. Ping were a little bit, not quite as much, I don't think, but they were around. But those were probably the main ones right there. And you know, a lot of those clubs, when we go to the next screen, were affiliated with certain players, just like today. So, you know, Nicholas was a McGregor guy. Johnny Miller was McGregor, then Wilson. Crenshaw was McGregor. Weisskopf, McGregor. I don't know what Gary played. He was Ram, I guess. So those were the players. So if you think about the clubs and the players, what type of woods were they using back then? Woods. Metal woods, right? They were persimmon woods, laminated woods. They had inserts. What about irons? Blade forged irons, right? And shafts? Pretty much steel, right? So when you look at these guys' swings, what would you say was a common thing in most of their swings back in the day? They were a little different, right? You know, they were all a little bit different. But what was like a common thing back in the 70s? Other than bell bottoms and big collar shirts. Reverse C. Why do you think they had a reverse C? Help get the ball in the air, right? So they developed a swing around the equipment they were using. They used balata balls, which spun a lot. They used wooden drivers, which center of gravity was a little bit different. They used blade irons. So they created a swing. So the reverse C, for some of you younger people that may not know, I mean, the lower body would kind of go forward, and the upper body would hang back, and you get this kind of reverse C in the back side of your body. And pretty much everybody but Trevino, I would say, had that in there, of those guys. Trevino was a little bit unique in how he swung the club. But all those guys pretty much had reverse C. All of them used a wooden driver. All of them used steel shafts. All of them used a balata ball. Okay? So we go to the 80s. You know, Titleist still with a pro trajectory, still a wound balata ball, the Wilson Pro Staff. The Tour Edition was a solid ball. You remember the Tour Edition? Greg Norman used that ball, spun a ton. Max Fly had the DDH with a different dimple pattern, so you're starting to see a little more of that. Slazenger came in the market with their retirement program. They had all the different shirts and stuff you could buy. And clubs, you know, Hogan was still probably one of the leading forged clubs. Ping became very popular in the 80s. Callaway came on with the Big Bertha. TaylorMade came into the equation. Wilson, also with their forged clubs. Now, I think Titleist was just on the edge of kind of starting to get involved a little bit here. They had some clubs that was a DTR was around, and they weren't really a huge player in the club part of things yet. You know, and then you go to the players here. So you got, you know, Nicholas, Watson, Curtis Strange, Greg Norman, Ballesteros, Kite, Payne Stewart, Crenshaw. So most of those guys, again, still predominantly using, a few guys were using, Curtis was using a metal driver. I think the rest of the guys all were still using wood drivers at that point. So you still saw a lot of the reverse C. Now Curtis, I'm going to kind of single him out. What was different about him other than he used a metal driver? So he wasn't a reverse C guy. He was the first guy that really, you know, he worked with Ballard. So, you know, he really wanted to have a lot of upper body movement and, you know, fire on the right side and trying to get rid of some of that reverse C. So he was kind of the first guy that really had some success with Ballard's method. And you saw a lot of guys kind of migrate to that. We'll talk more about the teachers in a little bit. But, you know, it's funny, he used a metal driver, and he had that motion. The rest of the guys all still using wooden drivers, steel shafts predominantly. I think Payne might have used a graphite shaft, and Kite at one point, yeah, when he won the Open, he had a persimmon head with a graphite shaft. You know, balls and Titleist Professional, Max Fly Revolution, we're going into the 90s now. Spalding Strata, that was the multi-layer ball. Slazenger, Bridgestone started coming on board. You know, I think Titleist started becoming a lot more popular in the clubs. Ping, Callaway, TaylorMade, Cleveland, Mizuno, popular. Yonex, the big graphite-headed woods, and then Cobra out here. Now, somewhere, I remember there was some California brands. What are some of the California brands that have kind of come and gone? Lynx, I don't know if they're still in business or not. McHenry Metals. Was it Olimar? Confidence. I remember there was a club called Confidence way back when. So you can kind of see, there's a few constants as you go through here that you're seeing slide after slide. Players-wise, Greg Norman, Payne Stewart, Price and Faldo, now you're starting to see a little bit more of a different type swing. Couples, real homemade swing. Davis, Mickelson, Tiger Woods. So now you're starting to see a little bit more of the swing, the modern day swing with some of these guys. Norman was still old school. Payne was still kind of old school. Davis kind of was old, but kind of has worked more traditional. Phil's still got a little bit that reverse C in there. And then, of course, Tiger, he's had 4 different generations of swings and won with all of them. So we got to pull him out of the equation. I think he could win swinging anyway. But anyways, so, obviously Price and Faldo had a little bit more of the Ledbetter open-face players, a little more on top of the ball, a little more upper body oriented, more stable lower body. But the rest of the guys were still pretty much constant with what was been done the last 20 years, or 20 previous years. Balls now, the Titleist Pro V in 2000 came out. Now the wound balls are pretty much going away. All these balls now are pretty much, multi-layer balls, different covers, things like that. Basically what they figured out was the top flight was the first really solid ball. What was the problem with the early top flights? No spin. You go forever, so when you're playing in a scramble, you hit the top flight off the tee, and then you substitute a Titleist for into the green. But they figured out how to take that construction, the top flight, and change the cover and change the insides of it to where off the tee it went like a top flight, but around the greens it spun like a wound ball. So that was to me a huge breakthrough in golf, to where you get the benefits of both type balls. Obviously, Titleist, Ping, TaylorMade, Callaway, those were probably the main clubs. There's obviously other brands. I'm just kind of picking some. Players, you got Tiger, Phil, VJ, Davis, Ernie, Retief, Furyk, Stricker. So even in the 2000s, you still had some guys that had that kind of reverse C. VJ's got a lot of them. And they're mostly taller players like Phil and VJ. Their lower bodies, long arms, a lot more lateral. More difficult for those guys to maintain posture and rotate more centered. But again, you start seeing a little bit different. Furyk's obviously has a very unique swing, but the rest of them all pretty traditional. And I did a clinic with Hal Sutton one time, and we were talking about it. He was talking about how modern day teaching has changed the game. And I said, well, how would you say it? He goes, we went out on the range back in the 50s or 60s. He goes, I could stand on this end. You could line up 20 players on the other end, and I could just watch it swing. I could say, oh, there's Trevino, there's Nicklaus, there's Palmer, there's Hogan, there's Snead, just by the way they swing the club. He goes, now you could take 20 tour players down there, and you couldn't tell them apart. They would all look the same. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know. I mean, I think that you have certain things in your swing that are kind of yours that you have to identify that work for you and that you have to really get good at. And then there are other things that need to be more fundamentally sound. But I'm a big believer that you don't teach everybody exactly the same way. You have to kind of see what their tendencies are, what works, what doesn't work, and try to develop a swing that's right for that particular person. And when we get out on the practice tee and we do some fitness things in there, we're gonna find some things that some people can do and some people can't. And those limitations are gonna influence how you swing the club. And they'll give you some of these signature things that you'll have in your swing. Maybe through fitness you can get some of it to go away. Maybe you can minimize it. Maybe you can't. But that's something that I think in teaching golf needs to be addressed. So, if you think about the top equipment brands, you've got Titleist, Ping, TaylorMade, Cleveland, Mizuno, Bridgestone, Nike. I mean, would you say those would be the top brands of today? Would you put anybody else in there? So the pie's gotten smaller. A lot of these companies have kind of come and gone, but certain ones have kind of hung around forever. I mean, a lot of companies are being bought up by other companies. Seems like places like Dick's Sporting Goods are buying a lot of these brands that have gone away. They just bought the Top Flight brand. I guess they're going to do their own thing. So, the golf industry's changed a lot, and it's going to continue to change. But there's certain brands that kind of have stood the test of time. Why do you think those brands stood the test of time? Why do some brands last and some don't?
Evolution.
They stay with the curve, right? They're not just staying. If you just make forged golf clubs today and that's all you make, you're going to lose a certain segment of the market. That's pretty small. So you have to continue to evolve with the times, with technology. What else?
Budget.
Marketing, budget. I mean, there's a lot of different factors. I don't have the answers to all of them, but I know that to stand the test of time, you have to make a good product. And I think the things that I think that are important in a golf club. What do you think is important in a golf club? If you're buying a club, what's the first thing that you think is important? Appearance. So some people want the look. Okay. So if I give you just a club that looks great, is that enough? Probably not enough, right? What else? Feel. Right? So if you have a club that looks good and feels good, those are two things. You might have a chance selling that club. What else? Performance. Right? So if you have a club that looks good, a club that feels good, and a club that performs, then I think you got a winner. You can get away with two. Like initially Callaway, the Big Berthas, nobody would like the way they look, but they perform good, so they work. People would buy them. The forged blades still are around. Why? Because they look good and they feel good. The other clubs might outperform them, but certain people like certain looks and feels, so they continue to play those clubs. But I think you have to have a home run. You have to have all three, and to have success, you have to have two. You can't have one. If you only have one, I don't think it's going to work. And then you have to have, obviously a presence. I think the tour has a big influence on what people buy. I mean, they want to play the clubs that the best players in the world are playing, even though they're totally different. At least that brand, they want to play. So let's talk about the top teachers. And obviously, I've only put two up here. There's tons of teachers. And my feeling on teachers is there are probably, I don't know how many times more great teachers that you've never heard of than you've heard of. I mean, to me, we could go out in LA, we could go to some places you've never heard of, and we go out there and we can find some great teachers. And just because people know your name doesn't mean you're necessarily better than someone who doesn't know their name. It's just they've been in situations and been fortunate enough to have the exposure and some success, and people recognized it. But these are the guys, in my opinion, that in their era were kind of the top, two or three. Obviously the 70s, Toski and Flick. What made those guys famous? Toski was a great player. He was a leading money winner in the 50s. Flick was a great teacher. They kind of teamed together, did the Golf Digest schools. They were featured in the magazine. And they did very well in producing that. The Golf Digest school staff as a whole, if you look at it from start to finish, may have been the best collective group of teachers ever assembled. I don't think you could ever do that now. It just costs too much money. Everyone wants to kind of be on their own. But to be able to go to dinner with Toski and Flick and Costas and listen to those guys talk about students and swing and theory and stuff like that, I mean, to me, it was unbelievable. I was very blessed to be able to do that. And those two guys, still in their 80s, and still as passionate about teaching as they were 40, 50 years ago. They both love to teach, both passionate about it, and both very, very good. The 80s, Costas and Ballard. Peter kind of came up under Toski and Flick. One kind of went off on his own. In the 80s, had a lot of good tour players that he was teaching. Ballard, obviously, with Curtis Strange's success. That's a way to get known as a teacher. The 90s, Ledbetter and Rick Smith. Ledbetter worked, he did a great job with the students he had. He's probably done more probably as much for teaching golf as any other teacher. I mean, he went out, he first got to go out on tour and use video and really kind of brand himself as a full-time teacher. Rick Smith had success with Phil, obviously. And then the 2000s, Butch Harmon and Hank Haney, I would say, were probably the two most renowned. Why do you think they're the most renowned? Yeah, one guy. So the tour presence, if you want to become a top teacher, is important. I think you have to be able to teach the best players in the world, and you have to be able to have success with the best players in the world to be recognized in that top. It's kind of like you can be the greatest Pop Warner football coach in the world and win every game, and you're not going to be known. But if you win the Super Bowl, you're going to be known. So, if that's your aspiration, You know, you have to develop players. You have to start with juniors. People, how do you get to where you work with the best player? I think you know, when I started as an assistant pro, I think my first job I made I was $10 a half hour, $20 an hour. And who do you think I taught? Kids and wives. That's what you get. You get the beginning wife and you get the kids. All right, so if you get the kids better, you know, the wives start coming, then you might get a ladies clinic to go, and then the wife starts playing better, and the husband might see it, so you might get a mid-handicapper, and then from there, eventually you might get the top player of the club. You go play golf with them. If you can play a little bit, they might ask you a question, and it kind of evolves from there. But ultimately, you have to be teaching the best players, either in your area or at your club, to be recognized. So you have to get results. I know Jamie's here. Jamie Mulligan in here somewhere? I know he's going to come. But, you know, there's a perfect example of a guy who has done a great job of developing players. And yet, he's probably not known nationally as well as he is in Southern California. But a guy who's taken juniors to college, to the tour, those to me are the guys that I want to be around, that are passionate about helping people move up in levels. And through that, you may get notoriety, you may not. But I know Jamie pretty well. He's happy with just making his players play better. He doesn't really, even that's not his aspiration. His aspiration is to help these players get better. So that's always been, you know, if you can get recognition, because I don't ever think you're going to get there if that's what you want to do. I think if you are passionate about helping the student that you're with and they evolve and they get there and you get great recognition because of that, I think that's the best way to get there. So all of us have a brand that we're building. You're your own brand, just like a tour player is their own brand. And when I talk to my tour players, I had a kid that I teach last year that was playing really well in a tournament, and he got to the final group the last day. He was a rookie on tour and was tied for the lead after 4 holes in the final round, and then hit a bad shot, made a double, and progressively frustrated and got worse and started acting like a 12-year-old, you know, not doing the right things. And so at the end of the round, I told him, I said, listen, I said, you're your own brand. You know, people aren't going to want to sponsor you. People aren't going to want you to do their outings. People aren't going to want you to do things if you can't act the right way. And, you know, there's 125 guys that have their tour card out there. Why would they pick you? And if you do something like that, they're not going to want to pick you. So I think it's important that we all understand that what we do and who we are and who we affiliate with is going to determine our brand. And who your brand is going to determine who you are and what opportunities that you're given in the golf business. So your achievements obviously are things that help you build your brand, whether you do that through management, teaching, playing, administrating, whatever it is. You know, what you achieve is going to be affiliated with you. Obviously, word of mouth. I was telling someone, you know, Sergio gets kind of a bad rap about, I was telling Fletcher at dinner last night about how he gets kind of a bad rap about things he says, you know, spoiled brat, that kind of stuff. So I'm at Augusta this year, coming off the 7th green, going to the 8th tee. There's a kid in a wheelchair, you know, with some kind of cerebral palsy or something, and Sergio goes over, rubs him on the head, gives him a hug, takes a picture with him. There's probably 100 people around there watching it. And they're telling the story just like I am, man. It was so cool. I mean, he wasn't called over there. He went over there, saw the kid, and when he made a point to go over there and do that, everybody's going to be talking about that. You know, man, I saw Sergio do that. What does that do for his brand? It goes up like that. What about when you go out and you're walking to the range and there's a junior out there on the end with his dad struggling? You go over and say, hey, you know, hold it like this, do this, this, and this, and you spend 5 minutes with him. What happens then? You know, you're looked at a totally different light. They look at you as, holy cow, he took the time to come over and watch me do that. In fact, I'm reading that the Big Miss book. How many of you read that book? Interesting book, isn't it? Well, halfway through, I mean, early in the book, Hank Haney talks about Jim Hardy was the pro at Exmoor where he was a member. His parents were members, and he came home from college, was going on to hit balls. It was a cold day in early spring, and Jim Hardy went out and watched him hit balls. And you know, say, yeah, I might come out and watch you hit some. Went out there and spent some time with him, and he still remembers that to this day. The one day he went out on that cold spring day and took a couple minutes to watch him hit balls. So you can make an impact in a lot of different ways. So I would encourage you to look for opportunities like that along the way, whether it's with your members or your members' kids or even a guest. That goes a long way. And it works the other way too. You know, if you do something the wrong way, people are going to see that as well. So I think we all need to look for ways to try to continue to build our brand. Obviously, your reputation, that's just kind of things that have built up over time. Who you affiliate with. You know, certain places have certain affiliations. Certain clubs hire good players. Certain clubs have good teachers. Certain clubs have good member services. Certain clubs run great tournaments. So who you're affiliated with have a lot to do with who you are and what you are. What about a pyramid of influence? Does anybody know what the pyramid of influence is? Nobody knows what that is?
Wooden?
What's that?
John Wooden?
Well, he wrote a book. He has one. That's correct. This one basically is that certain people are going to influence other people. So if you're a good teacher and you go out and you buy a certain training aid and you get your students using it and it's working, what's that going to do to the other people that see you doing that? They're all going to want that, right? So there's certain influencers that you can impact who are going to influence the masses. And certain golf pros are going to have that ability to influence. So if you're a good player, you're the club champ, and you go in and buy a new driver, and you go out and shoot a great score, what are the average guys going to go, man, I want that driver. I want the driver he's using. Or if Tiger comes out and he's wearing those tennis shoes now, or Ricky Fowler's a better example, wearing that hat he wears. Think he's an influencer? You go to the Masters this year, I mean, I must have saw, I don't know how many hundreds of kids wearing those flat-billed Puma hats. He's an influencer. So that's why Puma should pay him a lot of money, because by him wearing that hat, a lot of kids want to wear that hat. And then obviously through promotion, you know, you have to promote yourself, and people have to know what you do and who you are and kind of what you stand for. So, you know, you all have your brand, and I would have you just today, if nothing else, just kind of look at, okay, where's my brand today? Am I happy with what I am, what I'm doing? What can I do to make it better? What things can I change? You know, your traditional things, you know, magazines, newspapers, television, brochures. You know, television's still pretty important. Magazines, I would say, are. Newspapers, not quite as much as they probably were. You know, brochures only probably at your facility. But this is where it's going. How many of you have websites, individual websites? I mean, this is where it's at. You know, websites, whether it's your own personal one, facility, or both. The search engine stuff, you know, when they put certain things in, where's your website going to hit? Are you going to be one of those first ones? Or are you going to be on page 10? Email blasts are easy to do if you get your students' email. That's an easy way to reach your students. Facebook, Twitter, and then the V1 Academy, which we use. Twitter's amazing. Any of you have Twitter accounts? That you tweet much? I haven't done a tweet in 2 years. The Seattle said we need a sub account, need to tweet. I just don't have time to tweet it. I'm not very good at it. But I still get probably 10 people following me more. I haven't done a tweet in 2 years. Every week I get 10 more people following me. I'm trying to figure out, why would you follow me? I don't tweet anything, but it's a powerful thing. I mean, I'm not going to be like, you know, Stuart Sink and Bo Van Pelt and some of these guys. I mean, they've got millions of people following them, and they're tweeting about everything they're doing. It's a great way to stay in contact if that's your deal. But you have to find some way to kind of to stay out there and stay in touch with your students, and to make sure that you're at least out there in the marketplace. So when I went to Sea Island, basically they had a pretty traditional learning center. How many of you been to Sea Island? Has anybody been there? So we have probably one of the nicest practice facilities in the country. It's right on the ocean. It's about 40 acres. We have double-ended range. I think we have 4 different tees, 3 different short game areas. So it's really nice. So there's no excuses from a teaching standpoint of not helping your students. So I tried to come up with an idea, something new and different. And I thought about how the tour players are trained. And I said, you know what? If I could get a group of experts in one place, and we could hit on all aspects of the game. So when someone comes here, we could just analyze where they are with their game and with all the different parts of their game, and have people who can help them wherever their needs are. We could do something pretty special. So we have 8 full-time instructors, and we have Mike Shannon, and Mike Shannon, the putting guy. I'm going to show you some of his stuff when we go outside on putting today. We have Morris Pickens, our sports psychologist. I brought Morris in. Morris works with Stuart Sink and Zach Johnson and Lucas Glover, and he's had 3 major champions in the last 5 or 6 years. Randy Myers is our fitness guy, brought Randy in. Randy's was the TPI, kind of helped do the TPI stuff. Really, really good. Works with probably about 20 tour players. And then we have two full-time club fitters who have both been national club fitters of the year. So I felt like, we have 3 teachers in the top 50 on the Golf Digest stats or rankings. So we have some good full swing teachers. We have a good short game person. We have a great fitness guy, a great mental game, and 2 good club fitters. So I thought, okay, we have a great team. So that was the plan. So I had to bring in a couple people, kind of get them to buy into the team teaching concept, because if you get somebody with a big ego, it doesn't work. You got to be able to kind of work together. So when I'm working with a student, I'll get with Randy, our fitness guy, say, here's what I'm trying to do, here are the things I'm working with him on. He'll say, okay, yeah, I can see that. And he'll work with them from the fitness side, I'll work with them from the swing side, and we get to the same goal. Same thing with our mental coach. If they're out there working on something, here's his tendencies, here's what he's doing, let's come up with a plan. So we're always kind of trying to get to the same point, but we work at it from different angles, and I feel like you can get there a lot quicker when you do that. So here's some of the results since 05 when I went to Seattle. We do about $1.5 million in instruction between all our teachers. We do about $800,000 in club sales. We've had 70 wins, which is higher now because we've had several wins this year, since 05 on the 4 U.S. tours. We've had 4 major champions, 5 Ryder Cup players, 8 President's Cup players. We've had over 100 wins on the major junior tours. We've had 20 Division I All-Americans. So we've had pretty good success. We've got a great place. I mean, we were at a 5-star, 5-diamond resort right on the ocean, so we have everything going our way. But we were able to really increase. When I went there, they were doing about $800,000 in instruction. So we've doubled it. Our club sales have more than doubled, and it's all a lot of it has to do with this tour influence that we've had, this tour technique of teaching that we're using, and we've had great results. And like I said, we've had I think 2 or 3 wins already this year on tour. And Davis Love's the Ryder Cup captain this year, which is going to be great. So it's been exciting times. So let me ask you a question. Would you change your approach if you were paid $1,000 for every stroke the player lowered their handicap? Or would you keep doing it the way you're doing it? How many of you would do exactly what you're doing now? How many of you would change? How many of you don't care? Basically, that was a question I asked myself, because it's real easy to fall in the trap of falling in love with teaching golf swing and forget about teaching the game. And I've kind of fallen into that trap when I really want to make a swing look really good. And so I think you need to ask yourself that question. Are your students getting better? Are they improving? So how many of you think, I've got the results right here, so how many of you think that since 1991, men and women have gotten better, worse, or stayed the same? So how many of you think that players, since 1991, players have improved or lowered their handicap overall? That's how many? Put those hands up again. So just not many. All right, how many of you think it's stayed about the same? And how many of you think it's gotten worse? Okay. All right. So my buddy at the USGA sent me this. So 1991, what do you think the average handicap for men was? 17? It was 16.3. How about women? What do you think the average women's handicap was? 29.7. That was 1991. So we'll go every 10 years. So in 2001, the men's handicap went down to 15.6, so it went down 0.7 of a stroke. And the women went to 28.5, which is 1.2 strokes. All right? So in 2011, it was for the men 14.5, and for the women it was 26.8. So since 91, the men's handicap's gone down about 2 shots, and the women have gone almost 3. So they've gotten better. Now, this is just the USGA's version of this. So what are some factors that may be skewing this a little bit? Equipment, right? So equipment's definitely better. Would anybody say the equipment's worse than it was 20 years ago? Equipment's better. Balls are better, clubs are better, golf courses are better, right? Although I think the golf courses are harder. So you have people leaving the game. So you could be losing a lot of these people that play for a year or two and then quit. They're the real high handicap group. So if you're losing the beginners, that could skew it down a little bit, right? But I think overall, I've been around a lot of teachers, and like I said, a lot of them that I've never seen that are probably really good. And I think generally, I think most guys that are teaching golf or women that are teaching golf are good teachers. I mean, I think they understand the swing. I think they understand cause and effect. And I think they know how to fix people's swings. I mean, I don't go out there, there's some methods I don't necessarily agree with personally, but if you get results, I'm going to say it works, you know. So as long as you're getting results, however you do it, is what I'm looking for. So if you have your own style, your own way, your own beliefs, and you can get your students to do it and they play better, I'm all for it. So I think overall, I think people are getting a little better, but I do think it's skewed because I don't think people are playing as often, and I don't think a lot of the golfers are staying in the game as long. I think they're getting in, trying it, and getting out. Why would they be getting out? Why would people not play golf? There would be some reasons. Time, money, no fun, too hard, golf course too busy. All right. So does everybody agree with that? With all those things? Anybody disagree with any of them? So the game's too hard, takes too long to play, golf courses make too busy, too expensive. All right. So we all know the problem, right? So do we all want to make golf grow? Anybody doesn't want golf to grow? So what's the solution? Why are we building harder golf courses? Right? It doesn't make any sense. You know, 12 holes instead of 18 might be a good thing, or 9 holes, whatever. But to me, the traditions of the game can't stay the same forever. We've already talked about how the swings evolve, how equipment's evolved, how everything's evolved, you know, care of the golf course evolves. I don't know how we can continue to say everybody has to play 18 holes. You know, when you go out and play on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning with 4 people, how many of them actually play by the rules? Does anybody play by the rules? Nobody puts them all out. You know, I can't find the ball, just drop one here, or you know, whatever. So the people aren't playing by the rules right now. So to say, I think they should, on casual golf, I don't think your handicap should count. You're going to go out and just play a casual round, just go play. In Europe, the only rounds that count are competitive rounds. That's the only way you can change your handicap, is competitive rounds. You know, if a guy wants to go out and play golf and have fun, if he wants to hit an extra ball, if he wants to give himself 4-foot putts, he feels good about it, fine. Just don't post it. The only ones that count are tournament rounds. Because I think people have more fun doing that. But everybody has to post a score every time you play, all that kind of stuff. I think people are turned off by that. The other thing I think is that the, whatever, 0.5% of the game, or whatever, not even that, say less than 1% of the players that are playing are skewing it for the masses, right? So Augusta National, for a perfect example. What have they done to Augusta National over the last 5 years? Putting trees everywhere, making it longer, putting rough in. Why are they doing that? Make it harder, right? For the 90 players that play at Augusta National. So everybody sees, oh, they're making Augusta National, so they have to build these golf courses that are tougher and harder. The average guy, he doesn't have any. How many people have fun going out playing bat? Nobody has fun. We should be building golf courses where people can roll the ball on the green. Shorter golf courses where they can hit, you know, short irons to the greens, you know, par 3s that are less than 150 yards long. Not as much rough. People can actually go out and shoot a good score. If they shoot a good score, they're going to play more. But you know, everything's skewed around what the tour players do. We got to make them longer. We got to make them harder. We got to grow the rough more. We got to make the greens faster. We got to put more slope in them. But that's not the masses that are playing the game. So in my opinion, I think we need to do the opposite. I think we need to build shorter golf courses, less rough, bigger greens, flatter greens, get it where people can roll the ball on the green and have fun. That's the way it started. You know, 50 years ago, if you go back, you didn't have golf courses built like they are today. So I think that's our challenge as professionals, is that find a way to get people to play more golf and have more fun, and find a way for them to be able to do it. So Golf 2.0, what's some of the things they're talking about? Tee it forward, play it shorter. As people get older, they can't hit it as far. Let them get up there where they can hit it and hit a club that's into the green that's receptive, as opposed to back there hitting hybrids into these little greens with all these slopes and undulations. If you're up there hitting 8 or 9 iron, that's okay to have that. But when they're back there hitting these long clubs in, some people have, you know, their pride's too big to do that. So some of those things, I think we need to be thinking outside the box, and we need to be thinking, how can we get the masses to play more? Let's not build everything around the top players in the world. So like Little League Baseball, all right? So if we did everything the Major League guys are doing, say the ball is going too fast, so we're going to make a heavier ball or something. The ball can't go out as much. So the kids have to play with that heavier ball. They can't throw it as good, whatever. Everything we do is built around what the top players in the world as opposed to what the masses are doing. So I think we need to start thinking about, I don't want to ruin the traditions of the game. If you're playing a competitive round, I think you have to play by the rules and you have to do the right thing. If you're just going to go out and have fun and play golf for enjoyment, the people aren't playing by the rules now. The ones I play with aren't. So why keep them accountable to it? But that's my feeling. How many of you agree with that? How many disagree? I'm sure some of you are going to disagree with that, with the traditionalists of the game. But you know, I think if we continue to do what we're doing now, I think the game's going to get too hard. You have fewer people getting into the game. The golf courses are too hard. It's too expensive. It takes too long. It's going to keep shrinking. We've got to find a way to get people into the game early, get them having fun with it, enjoying it, and be able to go around where it's not so expensive and try to do it. Because I hear the same things. Every time I do this thing, the same things come up. But nobody's really come up with a solution to how to fix it. That's what we've got to figure out. Okay, so the number one goal is to lower scores. You want to make your students play better, not just swing better. If they play better, they're going to want to play more and have more fun. So I think that's our goal as teachers. It's easy nowadays with, you know, you've got the video camera, you go out and look at all these great swings and try to use those as models, and I'm guilty of it as anybody. And you know, you got the TrackMan now, you can get all your different alignments, what the swing path, what the face is, all that. You can get all into all that kind of stuff. But just always ask yourself, is this going to help my student play better? Or am I just trying to make their swing look better? Not to say, I think you need to have mechanics. I mean, obviously you have to have good mechanics to be able to be consistent, do the right things. But I think sometimes we try to make things too perfect. And we don't really try to let the student play the way they should play. Why would you make a swing change? What would be the reasons to change somebody's swing? Okay, fix ball flight. What would you want to fix about it?
Make it more consistent.
So consistent ball flight, that would be one thing. What else? Great speed, so more efficient motion. What else? Yep, work around injuries or limitations. Anything else? Consistency. Yeah. So those would be the things. I mean, so when you're looking at somebody, you're either going to try to get them more consistent or more predictable ball flight, more efficient, or to either limit injury or work around an injury. Those would be the main reasons for making a change. So, you know, what we try to do with our students at Sea Island is, you know, we evaluate their body, we evaluate their mind, their technique, their equipment, their strategy, both on and off the course. So we're kind of looking at the whole package. And then once we've kind of looked at that, we figure out where are they now in all those different areas. Where do they want to go or where do they need to go? Are they able to do it? Are they willing to do it? And what's the plan to get them there? Because you have a lot of people that say, yeah, I want to be single digit. I'd like to be a single digit. I'm an 18 handicap now. But I can only play once a week and I don't practice. That's just leading up to frustration. So you have to be honest with people. And you have to really assess where they are. And you really have to look at, okay, this is where you are, this is where you want to go. And you need to be honest with them and say, you know, first of all, the way your body functions right now, there's no way you can get there. You don't create enough speed. You're not going to be hitting the ball far enough to be able to reach a lot of these holes. So that's not even going to be an issue for you. But if they say, yeah, I know that, but I'm willing. I'm going to work out 3 days a week. I'm going to get a trainer. I'm going to practice 3 nights a week after work. I'm going to take lessons twice a week with you. Okay, then you got a plan. Then you have a chance. But you have to be realistic with people, because I think if you make promises you can't keep, you know, they're going to get discouraged. Their expectations are going to be too high, and you're just leading to frustration, both from their standpoint and yours. So once you've kind of done these things, you know, you basically have to analyze the player. You know, what are their needs? All aspects: their long game, their wedges, their short game, their putting, their fitness. How does their body function? Are they flexible enough? Are they strong enough? How's their equipment work? You know, all the different parts: the woods, the irons, the wedges, the putter. You know, what's their mental game, what's their strategy like, and then what's their on-course and off-course behavior. So you really have to look at all those components there and then establish priorities in all those different areas. So these are what I call the 4 Ps. You got the priorities for the player, that's the what. And then there's a process or procedure for improvement, that's the how. And then there's a plan, off course and on course, that's the when and the sequencing, and then the production, that's the result. So what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to sequence it? And then did it work? And I think you have to go through all those different phases with your student. A lot of people don't ever look at the result. I mean, when you're working with good players, I mean, you need to look at the result. You know, is what I'm doing working? Or if it's not, let's make some adjustments in it. It's pretty easy to do with the tour players because they have stats you can look at and analyze, but sometimes for the average player, you can't do that as much because sometimes they could be doing the right stuff, they're just not getting the result. You know, I'm hitting more greens, but my putting's gone bad. Well, maybe you have to change the priorities of what they're working on and what part of the game they're working on. But all your players, you know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when and how you're going to sequence it, and then always look at the result. So that's what I call establishing a game plan. You know, a specific plan for improvement based on the student's goals, abilities, and commitment. Focus on the priorities of your student, track the progress, what's getting better, what's getting worse. Because if you have a player that's been working, like I have a kid that I work with that was really struggling with his long game. He's one of the top amateurs in the country. So we worked really hard on his long game. So he played in the SECs this week. He finished 11th. But he said, my putting and short game was terrible. So we need to work on my putting and short game. So why do you think his putting and short game aren't very good? He's always been working on his full swing. So I said, I striped it all weekend, but my short game on putting held me back. So it's easy to get off track. It's easy to start putting too much emphasis on one area of the game and not looking at the other area of the game. So, you know, this game plan really needs to be very specific, and you really need to make sure that you lay it all out for them. Okay, so to me, player development equals skill development. So if you develop the skills the player has, the player is going to get better. So you have your mechanics, your equipment, your fitness, your mental game. In the mental game, you have your physical routine, your mental routine, your different types of practicing, and then your application. So when you go into the mental side of the game, I'm going to touch on that just a little bit. The physical routine, that's basically how many looks you take, how you walk in, setting the club, all that kind of stuff. And then the mental routine. You know what the mental routine is? It's the same thing. It gives them a process to go through before they hit the shot. So like in a mental routine, what I do with my students is I have a line behind the ball, and they have to do all their thinking back there. So if they have a shot, let's say it's a 150-yard shot, it's a back left pin, and the pins, or the wind's from right to left. So they get the number first, and then they decide, is it a good number or a bad number for me? So 150 yards, you know, let's say it's a good 8-iron, so it's a good number. And the pin's kind of in the back, so I know I can't really hit it over the green. I like to hit a draw, and it's a left pin, so that's a good thing. The wind's right to left, so that's helping me get there. And then the other thing that you have to add in there is how confident are you? You always have to add a level of confidence to it. Why do you think that's important? Because every day is a little different. You know, every day you're feeling different over it. So if I get over that shot, I hit a draw, and the hole before I hit a pull hook, and I got a back left pin, and I got a right to left wind, and I just hit a pull hook. I'm not going to be, I'm like, I might have to go a little more to the right in this one. You know, so you have to factor that in. So just to get them to think through the shot and really decide, okay, what am I going to do with this shot? Where am I going to try to hit this shot? I don't want them doing that over the ball. I want them to do that before. So the mental routine is really just taking all these factors in and figuring out what you're going to do before you walk in there and have a good, clear picture of the shot you're going to hit. Some players can visualize it, some can't. But I at least want them going through before they go into their physical routine of putting their grip on, walking in, setting their right foot, aiming the club. I want them knowing what they're doing, seeing the shot they're trying to hit, picking out their initial starting point of the ball, seeing the amount of curve going to the flag, all that kind of stuff. Another thing in the mental game that I think is important is the difference between process thinking and result thinking. You know the difference between those things? What would be process thinking? Yeah, it's something, it could be swing mechanics, but it would be more like, let's say I had a 4-foot putt on 18 at Augusta, to win the Masters. Okay? So I get behind the putt, I look at it, so I do all my thoughts back here. I say, okay, I read the break, I got a good feel for the speed. Okay, I feel like I got to hit it right edge and firm to make it. All right? So when I'm over the putt, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to hit it right edge and firm. And then as I'm going through, I might have one key thought, like, smooth, or accelerate through, or whatever your putting thought is. So that would be a process, because you're into what you have to do to make the putt, and something, like you said, more of a mechanical thought or key to use to do it. Result thinking would be getting behind it and saying, oh my gosh, this is to win the Masters. I've always wanted that green jacket. This would be a lifetime exemption in here. And all you got to do is make this 4-footer. All right, you got to make this to win. Thinking about the result, more into what might happen. And most people, I think, that really get yippy or nervous or things like that are more into results of what people think, or what the result of the shot is, not the process. So if I'm thinking just right edge and firm versus this is to win the Masters, it's a totally different mindset. And I think most people do better in process thinking. In fact, I heard Tiger one time, they asked him when he was trying to win the Grand Slam, they said, how do you hit these shots coming down the stretch? All's on the line like that. And he said, I'm so much into seeing the shot I'm trying to hit and the shape I'm trying to hit and feeling that, I'm not even thinking about what it's for. That's the furthest thing from my mind, because I'm thinking about hitting 6-iron, 2 yards right, trying to hold it up against the wind or whatever. But he's not thinking about the result of it. And I think most players do better thinking about process as opposed to results. But there are always exceptions to that. The practice stuff, I think there are 3 different things. We'll talk about that when we go outside. I think there's block practice where you hit the same club to the same target, random where you're hitting different clubs to different targets, and then transfer, which is kind of simulating what you're going to do on the golf course. And I think when students are trying to make a change, to me there's 4 different levels that they have to kind of get over until they really become confident in it. So I think the first thing is, practice tee, short game, putting green. Just going out there and being able to do it. And all of us have students, when they're with us on the practice tee, they can execute the change, they hit good shots, and they become very comfortable with it. So why do you think that would be the easiest one to overcome? No pressure, no consequences. You're just hitting it out to a range, or there's nothing on the line. So that's the easy one to do it, because you really have nothing to lose. You just hit another ball. The other thing I think that the reasons people do well with the practice tee short game stuff is because you're hitting the ball every 20 or 30 seconds, so you can kind of get into a rhythm of hitting shot after shot after shot, which never happens on the course. You never hit a ball as quickly as you do on the range. So on the range, you're hitting one after another. When you play, you're not hitting them quite so often, unless you don't hit it very far. And then the next step would be on the course. Can they take what you taught them on the practice tee, and can they execute it on the course? Most people can do that. If you go out and play with your wife late in the day and you're not playing with your buddies, playing a relaxing round, it's a little easier to do. The next one would be in competition. So can you do it when there's money on the line? Can you do it in a tournament? And then the last one is, can you do it in competition when it matters? When it's on the line, when you absolutely have to do it, can you suck it up and hit the shot? And that's the final kind of hurdle. So as people are making these changes, there's these different hurdles they have to get over before they really become confident in it and before they really own it. So I think you have to be understanding with your students as they do it, and then figure out if they can do it on the practice tee, why can't they do it on the course? And what things can we do on the practice tee to help them do it on the course? And we'll talk more about that when we go outside. So this is kind of an example of something I did with a tour player. I looked at his stats. He called me up, and one of the things when a player calls you to work with them, I always want to be prepared. So before they come, I've already looked at their swing on video. I've already looked at all their stats. So when they show up, I'm ready. I don't want to just be making these decisions on the fly. So basically, this player struggled from 75 to 125 yards, and he wasn't very good around the greens. His scrambling percentage was not to where it should be. So what I did was I took out his 3-iron, and we went to 4 wedges. So before the change, he used a 48, a 54, and a 60. And then after the change, we went 48, 52, 56, and 60. So we added another wedge and took out the 3-iron. When we looked at his carry distance on his 3-iron versus his 4-iron, it was less than 10 yards. So we strengthened his 4 a little bit, made it a little bit longer, strengthened his 5, the gap went down to like 3 or 4 yards, but we were able to close the gaps in the bottom part of the set. Where he had big gaps in the bottom, we were able to get those a little closer, which is where he needed his help. His technique, he was kind of a late setter, you know, kind of set it late, down-cocked it a lot, so we try to get the club to set a little bit earlier on the backswing, try to get him a little shallower into the ball, try to even out his pace where he didn't have that quickness in the transition, try to get him to where he had one consistent trajectory he could hit and then work off of that. And he couldn't hit a high soft shot. He had so much hinge and so much lean in the shaft, so we worked on trying to set it earlier and then try to almost feel like he released it a little bit more to get that high soft shot. We did some drills where he had hit his full shot. We developed a go-to yardage with all of his different wedges, and then we worked on crossover yardages, which is like if he hit a full 52, say 115 yards, we started with his 48 at like 115, so he could have those crossover yardages. He could be just as good with a full shot as he could with a partial shot. So if he needed to hit a partial shot to take spin off or for wind conditions, things like that, we could do that. I always want to do that. And then we worked on 20-yard gaps, so we always worked on that crossover. There were about 15-yard gaps between his clubs, but we always worked on 20-yard gaps. So let's say one day he might work 60, 80, 100, 120, and then he would use his different wedges in those areas to get good at working on those crossover numbers and that go-to number, and then the full shots. And then I made him, I'm trying to get 3 different, so I'll go over there. We worked on 3 trajectories, the low, medium, and high. And then I made him do this game on the golf course, which I call 3-3-3. So basically, he would play 9 holes. He'd play 1 ball, just regular, for a score. And then he would take a ball from inside 120 yards at a different distance on each hole. He would play that ball out for a score, and then he would play a short game shot, a different short game shot in every hole. So he had 3 scores. He had a full swing score, a short game score, and a wedge score on every hole. And like I said, each hole, the wedge yardage was different, and each hole he had a different short game shot. So one day it might be a bunker shot, or one hole might be a bunker, one might be a low chip, one might be a flop. And the wedges would go from like 120 to 60. Did that go off?
They were off completely.
Okay. Can you still hear me okay? A little louder? Okay. So I made him go on the golf course and do this. And the other thing I told him is 25% of his practice time has to be with his wedges doing these things, scrambling and 75 to 125 yards. So the first year, from 75 to 100 yards, his proximity to the hole was 18 feet 1 inch, and that put him 120th on the tour. From 100 to 125, he was 22 feet 6 inches, which was 178th on tour. His scrambling percentage was 54.69, which was 158th on tour. His scrambling outside of 30 yards was 26%, which was 126. So his 120, 178, 158, 126. After doing this, year 2, at the end of the year, his proximity went from 18.1 inch to 15.5, went from 120th to 26th. 22 feet 6 inches, which is 178, went to 17 feet 4 inches, which was 11th. 54% in scrambling, he went to 57%, which went from 158 to 118th, and then he went from 126th at 26% to 31%, which was 59th. So this worked. Taking the 3-iron out, putting the wedges in there, giving him some technique things, giving him some things to practice. You know, in this situation, it worked. But that's a very distinct plan for a very specific part of the game. And I think we lose some of that. I think sometimes we do too much general stuff. So, you know, this was a tour player, so it was very easy to identify the areas, and it was very easy to come up with a plan for it. But they still have to do it, and you still have to be doing the right stuff to get it to work. So that's just one example of a way of taking a certain part of the game and putting together a plan. So there were some things, if we go back, you know, we did some things with equipment, we did some things with technique, we did some things with practice on the practice tee, we did some things on the golf course, and we gave them a certain percentage of time that they needed to work on it. So it wasn't a general plan. It wasn't like, all right, you're not very good in these areas, go practice it. It's like, here's what you're going to do, here's why we're going to do it. And I think we need to do a better job with our students that are very serious about getting better of being more specific. They don't know. We think they know, but they don't know. They think they know, but they don't know. So we need to be specific in what we're doing. So, you know, the first part of this is the teaching part of it. You want me to just turn that off?
Let me try to turn it down.
Okay. So I feel like the aliens are going to be coming in. Waiting for the UFO to land out there in the 18th green. Is that good? Can you still hear me? Okay, so this is the area I think that most people do a good job with, the teaching part. You know, keep asking why until you find the cause. Teach them how to fix what's wrong or how to add what's missing. Understanding of what to do, block practice, same target. So I think this is like your general lesson. You go out, you look at a student, you look at what they're doing, you make an analysis. Here, I want you to do this, 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 and this in your swing. Go work on it. That's what I think we do pretty good at in general. So basically, you're trying to diagnose what's wrong, figure out what they need to do different, or if they're not doing something, how to put it in there. It's just your basic golf lesson on the practice tee. Okay, then the next part is what I call the training part. And that's where you expand the swing or stroke motion into a skill. Train the student and develop skills needed to be successful on the course. Random practice, several targets to develop skills, the variations of the game, and you use the block practice to develop the motion. So basically, you take this swing you've given them, and you try to take this swing and show them how to use this swing to hit the shots they need to play. All right? Now, it might be as simple as they need to hit a fade every time. Teach them how to go out and hit a consistent fade that starts down the left and cuts into the middle of the fairway. But basically, teaching them how to take their swing and develop a shot pattern that they can manage around the course to shoot a score. So this would be hit different clubs at different targets. Hit this one at the flag and try to keep it left of it. Hit this one and keep it right of it. Try to hit this one on the front of you. Try to hit this one high, soft, whatever. We're going to do some of this this afternoon. I'm going to show you kind of some of the stuff that I do. This is a totally different view to just going out there and working on the mechanics. This is showing them how to take the things you've shown them and hit different shots that they're going to need to shoot a good score. All right, then the last thing is transfer. Test your students and see if they can apply the skills under pressure. Simulate on-course situations with quantifiable results, pass or fail. Make practice tougher than playing. So that's the testing part. That's to get them nervous on the practice tee. So it simulates playing. And I think this is the area where you're really going to see whether you're teaching the stuff you taught them is in there or not in there. Can they apply it? Can they do it on the golf course when they have to do it? Or can they just do it on the golf course when they have a whole bucket, or on the practice tee when they have a whole bucket of balls to hit? So kind of the way I like to explain this, like John Wooden was probably the greatest basketball coach ever, right? He went up to UCLA. Anybody ever read his book? What do his players say about his practices? Harder than the games, right? He worked their tail off. By the time they got to the game, man, they'd worked so hard on it, the games became easier. But our students, you know, I think they do the opposite. They hit on a range, they don't have a target. You know, they hit balls all over the place. They're not specific in what they're trying to do. Then they go out on the course, and there's OB left, there's water right. They've got $5 on the game. They're playing with their buddies. They got a bunch of people watching them. You know, you're not going to be able to make that transfer. Most people aren't going to make that transfer very well. So I think when you can simulate game-type situations, I remember listening to Gene Chizik, the Auburn coach. I'm an Alabama graduate, so I'm not a big Auburn fan, but I thought he did a good job with it. But he was talking about the field goal, and the guy made the field goal at the end of the game to beat Oregon. He said, you know, for 2 weeks, we basically made him at the end of practice go out and have to make field goals from different angles, from different lengths, with music blaring, crowd noise, all his teammates around watching. And if he missed it, there was a penalty. Everybody would have to run more, they'd have to do something. So, I mean, this guy's out there every day after practice in different angles from the left hash, the right hash, different lengths, and he had to make these field goals, so many in a row, to be able to do it. So he said by the time he got to the game, he'd already done it. He didn't have as much pressure when your buddies are giving you a hard time because you got to run an extra mile and that kind of stuff. He'd already done all that. So he said that became easier. So when you can create those situations, especially for players that really want to compete at a high level, that's really important to do that. So, you know, the way I kind of explain it is, if you were a basketball coach, and you're a high school basketball coach, and you're going to, not even high school, let's say you're a Little League basketball coach, and you got a kid that's never played basketball before, you only have 5 on your team, he's the smallest guy, you need the big guys on the basketball, you got to make him your point guard. So this kid's 8 years old, he's going to be your point guard, he's never played. So what does he got to learn? What's the first thing he got to learn? How to dribble, right? So what would you teach? You teach him how to dribble, right? You can say, okay, spread your hand apart, relax your wrist, push the ball down, feel it up into your hand, right? So then you say, okay, do it with your left hand, right hand. Okay, so if you had a game that day, you'd have to teach him that, or the next day, how well would he do? Not very good, right? I mean, he knows how to dribble. It's one of the skills, but he doesn't know how to pass off the dribble. He doesn't know how to change hands. He doesn't know how to protect the ball. He doesn't know how to go forward, backward. So you basically just said, here's how to dribble, now go play. Now, you may learn after 3 or 4 games through different experiences, but you really haven't, you've taught him, but you haven't really trained him how to be a point guard. So if you go to step 2, now you've taught him how to dribble, say, okay, now here's how you pass off the dribble, here's how you protect the ball, here's how you switch hands, here's how you go forward, backward, here's how you go fast with the dribble. When you go through traffic, dribble lower. See, now you're taking the basic skill of dribbling and you're expanding in all the different variations, right? Now how is he going to do it? Better, right? But what else? He doesn't have a defender on him. So now you simulate a game. You make him, a guy in front of him, make him dribble around, do that kind of stuff. Game situations. Now he's got a better chance of being successful. But I think as teachers, you know, some of us, and I'm guilty of it too, we get so much into just teaching the basic dribbling that we don't teach them the variations. We don't give them in the on-course type situations to where they can go out and be successful. So we want people to keep playing. They've got to see some success at some point. So our job is teach them the basic skills, and obviously as the player gets more advanced, you teach them more variations. But for the most part, our goal should be give them the basic skills, try to expand them to where they can hit different shots and play. So from a golf standpoint, when we go out this afternoon, we'll talk about chipping. So let's say, what's the biggest mistake you've seen somebody chipping the ball? Scoop, the left, let's say the left wrist breaks down. So you teach them how to, you know, lean left, keep the shaft leaning forward, flat left wrist, bent right wrist, you know, all the different, hold their finish so they keep the club in line. You might put a shaft in the end of the club, you know, to feel it, whatever. So you teach them that, and then you say, okay, now you know how to chip, go play. How well are they going to do? They don't know how to make it go different distances. They may not know how to do it out of the rough. They don't know what club to use. So you have to teach that next point. So you teach them the basic technique, and you say, okay, now, you know, when the pin's close to you, you're going to use a little more loft. When it's further away, you might use less loft, or you might say move it back more, lean the shaft more forward. When it's in the rough, you need to use a more lofty club. So educate them on what they need to do so that they have what they need to be able to shoot good scores. And then put 10 balls around the green and say, okay, we're going to go around. You pick the club and you show me what shot you're going to hit. Now they're equipped. They know what they need to do technique-wise. They know how to make the ball go high, low, how to make it go different distances, and they know how to hit it out of different type lies that they may have. Now see how well they do. But I think that's more what I try to do with my teaching. I try to teach them the mechanics, but I also try to get them to where they have a skill that they can use to shoot better scores on the course. So I call this the TDs. There's the teaching, that's deciding what, they need to have an understanding of what they're trying to do, same target. The training, develop the skills, that's where they can execute different shots to several targets. The transfer, determine the results. Can they apply it? That's where you simulate what you're trying to do on the course. So you teach them, you train them, you transfer them, what they're going to do, can they execute it, can they apply it, same target, several targets, and simulation. Give me a high when you need to go. High sign. Okay. So the next thing I think that we need to be aware of is where should we teach it? Where should we spend the time teaching our students? Okay? So have any of you heard of Shot by Shot? It's a guy out of Connecticut. He basically has a program that amateurs can fill out, and it'll tell you kind of where you have, what your handicap is in all the different parts of the game. So it's basically a way of seeing how well you drive it, all the different parts of the game, putt it, chip it, all those kind of things. So when you look at time allocation, the first line, the very top line, I know those in your back can't see it, that's the PGA Tour. Then it's 0 to 9 handicap, 10 to 19, and 20 to 25. Bottom line. So we're going to compare the top line to the bottom. So the first one is percentages in the fairway. Tour player, 67%. 20 to 25 handicaps, 50%. The next one is greens in regulation. Tour player, about 12.5 greens around. 20 to 25, about 3.5 greens around. Next one is percentage saved on the short game. Tour players about 63%. 20 to 25, 19%. The next one's outside of 50 yards. Can't read it, you made it blue, I can't read it, sand. Okay, it's sand shot, sand saves. 48% on the tour, 11% on the 20 to 25 handicap. Putts made inside of 5 feet, 86% to 72%. I thought that was high. I have a hard time seeing 20 handicappers make 72%. That's what he's saying. This is the percentage of shots outside of 51 yards. Tour players, they hit 35, which is 49%, and 20 to 25, they do 47, which is 50%. So percentage-wise, they're hitting the same number of shots outside of 50 yards. Putts, tour players 30 putts, so which is 42% of their score, and average players 35, which is 37%. So based on this, where do you think they need the most help? Short game? So 63 versus 19%, I would say short game. And then putting, right? Those are the two that kind of stick out the most. So short game and putting. So percentage-wise, in your lessons, how many of you give more short game and putting lessons versus full swing lessons? Pretty good. At least we have some. Sometimes nobody does. So short game and putting is where you can help them the most. You know, they don't hit a lot of greens. Some of these things are skewed, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically, they're not hitting as many greens. When they miss a green, they're not getting up and down. And they have more 3 putts, obviously. They're making the shorter ones, but they don't make as many mid-range, and they have more 3 putts. So chipping and pitching, your tour players are going to have about 6 shots around. Your 20 to 24 handicap, or 10 to 24 handicap is going to have 9 to 11. So almost half the holes are going to be getting some sort of chip or pitch shot from 10 to 24. Average distance from the hole, inside of 6 feet. Most of the time, the tour winners are 10 to 24s. They're going to be somewhere between 12 and 15 feet average. So they're hitting it a lot closer. They have fewer shots. They're hitting it closer. You know, how many 12 to 15 footers do you think on tour the tour player make on average? 12 to 15 feet. They're probably less than 20%. So they're not going to make probably less than 10% from there. This is where it's bigger. The mistakes they make, that's where they miss the green with a chip or a pitch. So it takes them more than one to get on the green. Tour winners are about 6% of the time, which I think is high. And 10 to 24 handicappers, almost 1 out of every 4 shots, they're going to miss the green with a chip or a pitch in that handicap range. Percentage within 5 feet. When you get inside of 5 feet, the percentage of making it goes way up. Outside of 5 feet, it goes down. The tour guys are getting it inside of 5 feet about almost half the time, which is about the same amount of time they're getting it up and down. Only 12 to 22% from the higher handicapper. So they're not hitting it very close, and 1 out of every 3. So basically 1 out of every 4, they're going to get it inside of 5 feet, but 1 out of every 4, they're going to miss the green. So this is the thing what's called the seesaw effect. So basically a good shot, which is on the left, is a green in regulation, a chip or a pitch inside of 5 feet, a bunker shot inside of 8 feet, or a 1 putt between 4 and 8 feet. So that's kind of on the left. And then a bad shot or an error would be hitting a tee shot out of play, missing the green with a chip or a pitch, missing the green with a bunker shot, or 3 putting inside of 30 feet. So over here on the left, a 0 handicapper which is the top one, would have 18 good shots to every 1 error. So they're going to hit 18 of the things up here to every 1 they do on the bottom. The bottom one is the 30 handicapper. They're going to hit 5 good ones to every 9 errors. So as you hit more good ones, you have fewer errors. So that's the thing you need to understand, is that your 30 handicapper is hitting a few good ones, but they're making way too many mistakes. So if you can get them to keep the ball in play, to get the ball on the green on their first chip or pitch every time, get it out of the bunker and on the green, and not 3-putt outside of 30 feet, you know, that's going to be, their handicap's going to go down. Does that make sense? So not only do they have to hit, you try to get them to hit good shots, but try to get them to hit their bad shot where it's not as bad. I think that's really important to understand that you have to weigh those two things out. So as you hit more good ones, that seesaw kind of levels out a little bit. So 18-1 for your scratch player versus 5 good ones to every 9 mistakes for your higher handicap. So your average golfer, 18 handicap, shoots about 94, let's say. So they're going to hit 14 tee shots. They're going to hit 12 short game shots. They're only going to hit about 6 greens in regulation. If we give them a wedge shot into the par 5s, which and 34 putts, basically 68% of their shots are going to be used with what 3 clubs? Driver, wedge, and putter. Almost 70% of the game. So if you want to be a really good teacher, teach people how to drive it good, hit their wedges good, and putt, and you'll be very successful. So what I try to do with my students is get them to understand I want them to spend a third of their time working on their long game, a third of their time working on their short game and wedges, and a third of their time working on their putting. And in their long game, I almost want half their time with their driver, hitting their driver. A lot of time with the driver, because it's important. You're going to hit it 14 times. And then I want a third of the time working on their mechanics, a third of their time working on random shots, and a third of their time doing transfer. They're going to learn to work on their mechanics, learn to hit different shots, and then transfer.